All right, let's call this meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, September 20th. Let the record show that all three commissioners are present here in the building today. We'll jab at you there. So we'll start with the public comment period. And do we have anybody signed up for that? We don't have anybody. We do have two letters that were submitted, and I believe Diane has copies of those. One from Ms. McCloskey and another from Mr. Pascas.
That is correct.
You have those two? All right, let's make sure we get those entered into the record for today's meeting, please. Should I copy across here? Oh, there's a whole pile of them. All right. And that's, all right, so we'll move to our consent agenda. If you could read the motion on that, please, Diane.
To approve consent agenda items A through G.
Okay, and we do have one change for those following along. The Mitchell Way Sidewalk Improvement Project, which is item E on the consent. In the published documents, we had the wrong information about the contractors that put in bids for that. So the information on the front page of that was correct. We just had the wrong. What do you call this page, by the way? Bid sheet. The bid sheet. We had the wrong bid sheet that came with that project, but nothing else has changed about it. Nothing as far as the amounts have changed. It was just the wrong bid sheet that was attached to the document. So, any particular issues we need to discuss about that, Commissioner Robbins?
No.
All right. Anything else on the consent agenda?
No.
You good? Now, Commissioner Briscoe? No. All right. So, all in favor on that one, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Rob, I do have one question though, real quick, about item D, certain vehicles that are being declared surplus.
Yes, sir. What's
Is
your
there
question?
a yellow Ford flatbed in there?
No.
Those who have been here a while know exactly which yellow Ford flatbed
We're not surplusing that. No,
I
sir.
refer to, and can I bid on it if it ever does? I don't know if that's illegal.
It's not in the list.
I've actually bid though. All right, we're going to move on to our action.
That's a different Ford one-ton cab and chassis yellow. Do we have more than one yellow truck? I didn't realize that. You're referring to the like
I'm talking about
1960s
that.
era.
I think it's in early 70s, if I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a yellow one on here, but it's a 96.
It's a 96.
No, not that one. No,
You're welcome
no.
to bid on the 96 yellow one if you'd like it.
Really? No. Might do that. I
It's
don't
got flames on the hood.
I'm okay with flames. My van's getting old. My van will be 20 years old next year. Okay, so let's move into action items. And, oh wait, so we had a couple of, did I get those changes? Oh, it's Mike Hogan that we might be doing. Okay. Diane, action item number 1, please.
Approval of a motion to write off the delinquent account balances for Blue Heron Yacht Sales, LLC, in the amount of $3,900.83 for the lease account and $17,828.81 for the mortgage account, for a total write-off of $21,729.64.
All right, Ruby, and let's hear it.
Blue Heron Yacht Sale, LLC. Blue Heron had two accounts to report. Real estate lease and mortgage account that's Harbor.
Sorry, Chris.
Good to go. Too close. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Okay. Charges outstanding for the real estate account are $3,900.83. Additionally, charges for Squalicum Harbor are $17,828.81 for a total write-off of $21,729.64. Brief history on the account. Blue Heron signed their real estate lease in June of 2010 and began leasing monthly mortgage at Squalicum Harbor in May of 2011. Around the beginning of 2014, it became apparent that Blue Heron had started falling behind on their mortgage and lease payments. Despite the best collection efforts at the time, Blue Heron was unable to keep up with their agreements and was sent a notice of default in October of 2014. Eventually leading to both parties terminating agreements as of November 2014. Unfortunately, as we sit here today, Blue Heron Yacht Sales LLC has since dissolved and is no longer a registered corporation and likely has 0 remaining assets. I feel all collection efforts by the port have been exhausted, and staff is recommending approval of the motion.
I asked that this be brought out of our consent agenda, this one and the next item, which are both write-offs, as we don't have many public conversations about this. I don't think we've had any since you've been here, other than the one on the boat. So I want to give an opportunity in case you had any particular questions or wanted to hear anything from staff that was specific to these issues.
So when you say they dissolved, they filed bankruptcy and disappeared, or there was no assets that could have been attached for any of this, or we were a little, what went on in that direction?
Well, I'm not very familiar with the history on the case, but Blue Heron, we have consulted legal counsel, and they advised us that it is no longer a registered corporation, so it likely has nothing to go after from a collections perspective. So basically, all of our actions have been exhausted as to this point.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any issues with, questions on this one?
No, I see this was all in 2014.
Yes,
So
Commissioner.
it's been 2 years of trying to collect it, I assume?
Yes, sir.
No, I don't have any questions.
All right, great. All right, thank you. Don't like to often air the dirty laundry, but this is, I think, something that people should see, what we do here, so appreciate that, that presentation. And so with no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, great. And we'll have another similar one.
Thank you.
Next item.
Approval of a motion to write off the delinquent account balance for Pegasus Corporation in the amount of $14,000, 2 cents.
Steve.
Thanks, Diane. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Steve Shipman, presenting for Real Estate this afternoon. I think a little bit of history would be useful, Commissioners, in understanding what happened here with this particular tenant. Pegasus, which is essentially a shell corporation, is one person. His name is Alfred Portillo, and what Alfred does is he trains individuals to qualify for their commercial driver's licenses. Okay, and Alfred's relationship, Mr. Portillo's relationship with the port, goes back to the early 2000s, where he had leased, I should say, he had a license to operate. He'd run his trucks around certain areas of port property to train these individuals how to handle these rigs. So Alfred's business grew, and in 2010 he took on a lease for office space, a yard area, and shop space to service his fleet. This is about the time he started to fall behind in his payments, and Pegasus, Mr. Portillo was what you consider a slow pay. Staff would have to pretty much chase him down about every 90 days to get him to make a payment. But he would. And he did that for a number of years, a total maybe of 5 years. Alfred would come through with a payment and get caught up. Well, eventually he ran out of resources. His fleet was, it was hawked to another company that's also in that business, and they're in the actual financing business for tractor trailer rigs. So ultimately, we had to put Pegasus in default, and we did that not once but twice, because the initial address we sent the default notice to was not accurate. That took some additional time. So finally, the remaining balance on the Pegasus account, I understand, is about $13,000, and I might add there's about $4,400 of that is finance charge. Excuse me. The upside of this story is Mr. Portillo trained over 300 students to qualify for their commercial driver's licenses in this area. That's significant. And he also paid the port almost over $97,000 in rent over that period as well. Questions?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Anything?
Did he pay, when he was 90 days late, did he pay the finance
Yes.
charges when he became current?
Yes.
For those months that
Right,
he was behind?
he would pay enough in finance charges and rent to get current, which was basically 30 days out.
So was he on a month-to-month?
Yes.
So he paid $1,400 a month, he owes
Actually, About 2,100 a month was the total. There's several line items on that breakdown. If you add them up, they're
Okay.
about $2,100, yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense, and
Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Commissioner Briscoe? No further thanks for that, Steve. I do have one question, since we had two of these today. There's very specific rules about, with this gifting thing, and I wonder if either Frank or Rob, if you might be able to address how the state looks at these sorts of write-offs.
The state does look at these. The port has to make a reasonable effort to collect money that's owed. They don't have to, however, lose money to try and collect money. So you have to go through a reasonable process to collect what's owed. If port staff determines that they've gone through a reasonable process, there's no reasonable opportunity to collect the money, and/or it would cost more to collect than you could get, then you can write it off, and it's not a gifting of public funds.
Okay.
That's the rule. Comes up a lot, actually, with fire districts and collecting on ambulance transports is the main thing the auditor deals with throughout the state, that issue.
All right, thanks, Frank.
Thanks.
Anything from you, Steve? That's good? All right, so with no further discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, appreciate that. Little conversation, we don't have that often. Let's see, we've got, say, lease assignments now. Diane?
Approval of a consent to assignment of lease agreement between Index Industries Incorporated, MN Electronics LLC, and Stephen E. Andy Anderson.
Thank you, Diane. Again, some brief history on this transaction, Commissioners. Staff was able to convince Index Industries to relocate from Stanwood and began that conversation in 2008, 2009, and ultimately Andy Anderson relocated to what was the former Coors Distributing building on 300 Harris, if you know where that's at. The port did some significant improvements to it. The lease was for a 10-year period and with 2 5-year renewal options. And Andy has sold all of his, 100% of his stock interest to Mark and Lisa Wynn. And as a result, they're requesting the commission to consider a consent assignment of that lease from Index to the Winds as M&N Electronics.
Commissioner Briscoe?
What is it the new folks do? I tried to look them up online, and I couldn't come up with...
They are in a similar line of business as Index. They build to-order manufactured parts for various electronic things. Actually, Mark would probably be better to answer the specific questions about what they build there, so.
Okay.
I understand they do parts for Nintendo, is that correct? Yes. And some other very well-known businesses.
It's you folks.
You'll need
Okay.
this.
Would you be willing to give us a little background on? Yeah, great, we'll get you a microphone.
Right.
My name is Mark Wentz, and this is my wife, Lisa Wentz. We would like to tell with our background. We working on the electronics company for over 30 years, and we tried working on the PCB board and the cable and equipment for the controller and everything. And we try to supply the PCB board for the Index over 15 years, over 10 years right now. So that's why we know the Index in there, and that's why we try to communication with Andy, and we try to ask him and hey, why don't I retire here, so we would like to transfer this business to us, and for sure we can talk, this one. That's why we talk with Andy. And we come to in the Bellingham over here to work on this area.
Are you folks from? You're not from here?
We are in Everest.
In
Photo.
Uh-huh.
We do have the property in the Everest area here, but it's smaller than the. So we try to work in, and we probably try to move two company together in the future in the future.
So more employment up here?
Yes.
Oh, we like that.
Well, we try to spend the time over here with Andy for this one, and we love this area over here too, and very compare with us on the average and everything over here. So we really like this area too.
Oh, fantastic.
So you're taking over the assignment of the lease, which has 4 years left on it, with two 5-year options. Do you plan to exercise those options?
We will.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So does Andy get to keep his job for a while? Or does Andy want to keep his job for a while?
I'm a worthy advisor.
Oh, all right. That's good to know.
It's a good combination of businesses.
Need the mic.
That's it. No, see, he's retiring, right?
Thank
He's-
you.
He's done talking. He's out. Anything further, Commissioner Robbins?
No.
No, oh. No, okay. I thought, Commissioner Briscoe, anything further? All right, great. Well, welcome. I think that, obviously Andy believes in you folks, and I've only known Andy a few years, but he's been a real good member of this community since he's gotten here, and I think he's probably made a wise choice working with you folks. So it's, welcome. Yeah, good to see this happen. No further discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Steve. All right, it's good to see you all. And moving on, now we have another assignment of a lease, and surely this one is about LFS. Yeah, Diane, please.
Motion to approve the consent to assignment of lease between the Port of Bellingham, Redden Marine Supply Incorporated, and LFS Incorporated for premises located at 365 Harris Avenue, Bellingham, Washington.
Great, thank you, Diane. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Shirley McFerrin, Real Estate Director. This is a short-term lease that we have between the Port and Redden Marine for about 8,000 square feet in Warehouse 4, which is adjacent to our cruise terminal. And as you're aware, Lemmy Fish was the successful bidder in the receivership court for substantially all of the assets of Redden Marine. So we're asking you to assign this short-term lease that is on a month-to-month basis for 8,000 square feet from Redden to Lemmy Fish. And I do have a little bit of good news for you today, that we expect to bring forward at the next commission meeting for your consideration a sublease agreement between between Harbor Enterprises, who owns the ground or leases the ground from us on Roeder and Bellwether Way. And we're going to ask you to approve a sublease to Lemmy Fish, which will result in the majority of those employees staying employed in that location. So we're super excited about it. We have some details to work out, but we expect to have that on the next agenda.
All right, so this one is just for the warehouse space, nothing else.
That's correct.
Okay, great.
That includes the whole building, though? Yeah. No, nothing.
I'm good. It was an interim use for a warehouse.
That was
It's
it?
good, so.
Good? All right. That was easy. Thank you, Shirley. Because we'll be talking quite a bit more about the rest of Redden and
Yes.
that whole thing, so.
Definitely.
All right, hearing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you very much. So we're a little bit early for our 5 o'clock recess. Do we want to bump something up, or?
Sylvia, you care to do part-wide comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements?
You ready for that? Yeah, let's do that. I don't think Hogan's back.
Mike's not back, he's stuck in traffic, so.
So a little change to the agenda. Mr. Hogan is returning from Olympia, where he's going to be sharing his legislative update with us. So we're going to have Sylvia Goodwin give us a little conversation about our comprehensive scheme harbor improvements.
Yeah, I won't be 15 or 30 seconds behind either.
No, you won't. I can see your face. Still can't hear me. Got some of that anyway, right?
Well, it's on.
Oh.
I can't override.
It's in the manual.
I know.
All right, good afternoon, Commissioners. It's nice to be able to do this earlier, and we'll all get home into the sunshine a little earlier. That's great. We are not asking for any really direction or decisions today. This is just an update. I'm Sylvia Goodwin, Planning and Development Director. And what we have before you is an update to the Port's comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements. Long word. We've had in the past many comprehensive schemes of harbor improvements. We have one for each of our small areas of the port, being Blaine, Sumas, Squalicum, Fairhaven, and the Waterfront District, and we've had various other ones for Hilton and the shipping terminal. What a comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements is it's required under the RCWs for all ports in order to do capital projects or harbor improvements, as it's called. You have to have an adopted comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements, and the projects that we do have to be substantially in compliance with that comprehensive scheme. And this has been an ongoing issue as long as I've been at the port. We have these fairly detailed comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements, and then projects that we do, if they vary slightly from the comp scheme, then we need to amend them each year, and we're trying to get away from that. It's a good opportunity for us to get public input on projects that we're doing on a broader scale, and a tool to manage our port land and facilities, help us with budget planning. It's a handy reference document. So those are all of the purposes of the plan. We have a map in the plan. It's a little small on this screen, but it shows the location of all of our port properties. We have properties in Blaine, Sumas, the airport, Squalicum, Little Squalicum, Bellwether, the Waterfront District, and Fairhaven. So we have a different description for each of those sub-areas in the plan and bigger maps. That's just kind of the vicinity map.
Is that errant red pixel in the middle just an errant red pixel?
Actually, I believe that is a tiny piece of land that we have out there for some parcel, for some
Really?
purpose. I think it's some kind of a navigation something. I'm not sure if it's associated with the airport, but I do not believe it is a mistake. I think it's just a little remote piece of land.
I think it is a marker for the airport. Yeah. That's the
what
turn
that
point.
would be, Yeah.
Or in the middle. I'll find out what
I
that is.
didn't know the port owned that. I always thought it was a leased property, but.
Yeah, I'll find out what it is.
Cool.
So we have it divided into 3 chapters. The first chapter is just an overview that explains what it is, what does the Port Commission do, what is the purpose of the port, fairly short. Chapter 2 describes all of our port facilities. So for each of the individual planning areas, we describe what are our existing port buildings and facilities, the properties that we own in that area, and what is leased and what isn't leased. We have a section on public access, so if we have a park or a trail or a boat launch facility, that's described. And then on all of them, we have a section on vacant or underutilized land and a description of the planning documents that provide more information. And on all of those, there's a little asterisk that you can see, a red asterisk that identifies the big blocks of vacant underused land. And this one is in, that's a tiny little arrow. This one is in Sumas in the 2 big fields. And then what we try to do in all of these sections is put a little more detailed description of the vacant and underused land, what we might be able to do with it in the future. And idea, again, being as a planning tool, some of these underused parcels we should be selling, others we should be trying to market them for development. There is some development constraint that make them, that there's a reason why they're undeveloped. Maybe there's a zoning issue or a shoreline issue. Yes?
I'll have to ask this question later, but don't ask it now.
Okay.
In figure 2 on our the Port of Bellingham, the book you gave us, the draft, it has the Blaine Harbor with the inner and outer harbor lines. And the inner harbor line is in red, I presume. Is that what?
The lease parcels are in red, actually. So the inner harbor line goes across, I believe that one, the lease parcels. You know, when we get to the end, I've got a little bigger picture of it. I'll show you.
Okay, very good.
Okay. So anyway, that is the port description of port facilities, and then every one of them, again, has a map. And partly what I'm looking for your input, not today, but before we get these adopted, is there additional information you'd like to see on these maps? Is there information that's on here that you're not finding helpful that we could leave off? There's always a fine line between too much information and not enough information. So that's something that we would like your input on eventually, and not today. So on every map of each of the sub-areas, we have the red lines are the port parcels, that's the land the port owns. We have the PMA parcels are kind of the shaded more white area. Tenant buildings, land leases, the parks and open space, and in this case, and in most of them, we have city parks also. In this case, the green north of Marine Drive is the city of Blaine. And then, again, the red asterisk showing potential development opportunities. And again, we try to just point out some of the larger areas that are either vacant or underutilized and have in the plan a bit of a description of what we might be able to do there. So on this one, you were saying about the parcel, here, let me get on.
Yeah, the red line where it dips out into the middle of the harbor, that,
You're talking about,
just, you just,
drawing a square, not a line.
from gate 3 going towards the southwest, out towards your blue line, there's a, why is the rectangle line go into the harbor? What is, and then back, it shows it over the web houses also.
I'm trying to, I think he's asking, the rectangle line, the red line is not the harbor line, that is the port, the land that the port owns.
Right, but that's my question. How come there's a rectangle in the middle of our harbor that we don't own?
Oh, yeah, that is a street that may or may not have been vacated in the past. That's the issue. There was a city street through there. Chances are the port might have vacated it when we built the harbor. It's possible that we didn't get it vacated. City of Blaine does not have very good records on street vacations, and the county assessor shows that as being a street that's not vacated. Part of the value of doing these comprehensive schemes is we identify little glitches like that we can now follow up on and see, is that a land title issue that we need to resolve, or is the assessor just mistaken and maybe it really isn't a vacated right away, or is it something we need to follow up with the city, or in some cases, does it really matter? They're not going to be driving through the harbor, but it's something that we probably should have taken care of before we built this harbor way back when. And we'll do some further research now that we've discovered it.
The same case up on dry land then, we're right in the middle of our web houses?
Yeah, that one is one that we did discover, and we did resolve that one. That one, the city of Blaine had an old land title issue there, and we did a land trade sometime after '05 because I was involved in it. When we did the Wharf District Plan jointly with the city and did some other agreements, the city deeded us that little piece under the web locker. Okay. So that was, we've got a lot of these little land title issues in the port, and we've actually been doing a lot more detailed mapping lately, and Greg McHenry is a wizard, and he is very good at tracing down these land ownership issues, and as soon as we get to the bottom of them, we try to solve them. So those are all little things that we're trying to take care of. As we have our own GIS system and our own staff that does these mapping, we're discovering a lot of little land title issues that have been on the books for a while. So we'll get to the bottom of that, and I'll report back.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Commissioner Roberts, questions?
Okay, we're just about to the end of the presentation, and then I'd be happy to answer questions, or if you have them now, we can pause. Okay. So each of the areas in Chapter 3, we have capital project summaries of the projects that we're proposing in the next 5 to 10 years in each of the sub-areas. And we tried to draw those project descriptions as broad as we could, or as inclusive, so that we're describing every project that is fairly likely we're going to do. By putting in the routine maintenance ones, we try to think of all of the little things that might be needed as far as roofing and flooring and utilities, so that each time we decide we need to replace a roof, we don't have to go back and amend the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvement. So that's why they're drawn fairly broadly. Upgrading existing facilities, things that we know need to be upgraded or we suspect need to be upgraded in the next few years. Cleanup and environmental restoration projects we have a pretty good handle on, and they're described generally. And then proposed new facilities are things that directors have proposed or that we have discussed or that you have discussed that we may or may not be funding in the next few years, but we're aware of the issue. So all of those are described generally. We can always update these to add more projects as we get closer, but we try to draw them really broad to what we think they're going to be. Next steps is I'm asking if all of you will review the draft plan during September and early October. If you have questions or comments, again, I'd be happy to talk to it tonight or during your weekly meetings with the director. Either I can join you or any of the other staff that are involved in whatever issue it is you're concerned about can join you. That's optional. A public hearing, we would like to advertise a public hearing on October 18th, and at that point discuss any revisions that you have, and then adopt the final plan. I said November 1. It should be adopted before the budget, but it's not critical when we adopt it. We just want to get it adopted. So if you have big questions or need some big rewrites, then it can be delayed. But that's the ideal schedule. And then as far as update, it's designed so that we don't have to update it every year. We would update it every 3 to 5 years. If we amend the airport master plan, for example, in 2017, or if we amend the waterfront district plan in 2017 or 18, we would probably want to then follow with amending this plan so that everything is consistent. But otherwise, as long as we have projects that are substantially in compliance, we aren't going to have a need to update this nearly as often.
So are we looking at this for 3 years or 5 years?
The projects are probably more like 5 to 10 years, but as time goes by, we acquire additional property, projects that we weren't aware of get onto here. I'm thinking that we could update it as often as 3 to 5 years. There's really no requirement to update this ever. If everything we say in here is correct and we don't do anything that isn't in here, we won't need to update it. That never happens. That's just an optimistic viewpoint.
Sylvia, where does the public find this document on the port's website?
Right now, it is on the agenda packet for this meeting. If you click on that, it opens.
And then in the
What we
future-
will do is we will add it to all of our other comprehensive schemes, which I think is under port planning documents. And we will add it there. Actually, I've already found about a dozen typos that I will fix first before adding it there.
I can find it in my iBook.
If you go to About Us, you'll see a subcategory called Planning Documents.
Thank you, Rob. And that's where all of our other comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements, all the way back to the old ones, are in there.
So I'm sorry, let's throw a link here too to the right away on this new one as well.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Put a link right in the plan.
Yeah.
I have a link only to the port website, which doesn't get you the documents.
Okay.
So that is the end of the presentation. I do have some detail on the maps if there's any specific questions, but the idea today was to just give you an overview and then answer detailed questions later.
Commissioner Wishko, yeah, jump in.
Question regarding the vacant land behind Mount Baker. I'm looking at the blue lines, which is the shoreline. And then I see a setback for the maximum usable area. And in specific, the bottom corner where the log ramp is.
Yeah.
Does this mean that you cannot get to that log ramp from that usable area? It cannot be used?
You can get to it if it's a water-related or a water-dependent use, then you can drive through the buffer. And the buffers on, as the area, sorry, I don't have that one, I just have the bigger one here. that area is within the Whatcom County right now, and the shoreline regulations are somewhat negotiable on that site in the county, because it was a previously developed industrial site. So that means that the buffers are negotiable there. If we annex it to the city, the buffers are at this point 150 feet, which means it's not much usable space left. But at the at the county for a water-dependent use, say if we wanted to put a barge ramp, or if we wanted to put, we looked into a couple years ago putting a barge pier there that would have more deeper water, and that would be all doable under this plan.
Thank
Under
you.
the county's regulations.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Not getting deep into the weeds, I realize you don't want to do that at this point, but that trestle that's shown there on that little Squalicum Beach drawing, who's responsible for that? Is that ours, or?
It's the city of Bellingham.
We don't have any exposure at all on that?
No, sir.
Okay.
Which are you speaking to, Dan?
The long trestle.
Railroad trestle?
I think it was,
Oh, okay, yeah, next one over on that one.
was that the one they ran fuel up on?
Yeah, the cement went out that dock.
Yeah,
It's the old cement dock.
but it's the city, so we don't have any responsibility. Good, okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? We're still done early for dinner.
I do, but I think since we have time to discuss these, and I'll chat more with Dan and Bobby on this too, but yeah, it's a good start. So people can find us if they want to weigh in. They'll go to our,
We'll have it in 2 locations. For now, it is on the agenda for today, which is September 20th agenda, and you can find it under Comprehensive Scheme of Harbor Improvements. But we'll also link directly to it from About Us and planning documents.
about us and planning documents, all right?
And then we're going to advertise for the public hearing, and it'll have some information when we put the advertisement out a few weeks before the meeting.
And then one final thought. On the front, we have a photo of the Horizon Line ship, and I'm wondering if we could scratch out Horizon and Photoshop in a little crane and maybe some containers, you know.
Okay, you're probably right. We could probably
We will
find a
swap that
better,
photo
a better
out. Yes,
vessel
sir.
now that the
I'd say
Horizon's
leave the
gone.
photo. At least it's better than nothing there. But,
See, you updated the pier with Jorgensen Pier, that's good.
I did, yes.
yeah, good job.
And one other thing, as you're looking at it, not be thinking about what is wrong with it as it is, but thinking about what might be missing from it. Because there's always things that later you think, oh, why didn't we put that on? Like, we tried to put water depth wherever we have a navigable channel next door to it. But we tried to put acreage where we had it on vacant parcels, and we tried to put building square footages. But if there's information that you would like to see added to here, even if it's not for this draft, as we update it again, we can start building it and making it better.
Super.
Okay.
Thanks, Sylvia.
Thank you.
That would be it for now. Still 20 minutes forward for recess, which would make a long recess, which we could do. Brian, how long's your update?
1 minute, 15,
Can you do it in 15? 15, 20? All right. So this is kind of a standard update we're getting from Brian lately, which is always lovely, and thank you for that,
We're gonna
Brian.
get it auctioneer style.
We're gonna-
And
not
just for everyone's information, we're going to have a more extensive waterfront update on the August 4th agenda, so,
October 4th.
yes, sir.
Or we could have one next year on October.
At the same time, we're having August Fest.
Yeah, okay.
That's right.
Yes, we'll have August Fest on that day. Cool, thanks for jumping in, Brian, appreciate that. We're all covering for Mr. Hogan right now, so he'll get here eventually.
We're a team, right? We pull together. We're
Super
taking
cool.
one for Mike.
You're taking one for the team.
That's right. All right, thank you, Commissioners. Brian Gowan, Director of Environmental Programs. Actually, Sylvia is going to help me with this one as well here. We've got a 2-part. We'll make sure we keep it brief. Just a brief update on the waterfront district. As you mentioned, we're trying to do these a little more often, provide updates on where progress is happening, solicit some input and get direction from the commission on things that are coming up. try to get out in front of any surprises and make sure the commission's fully informed on the progress in the waterfront. So on this particular update, no specific direction or input today, but we will wrap it up with a kind of a forecast of some issues that we want to have you start getting on the radar that we will be asking for some detailed input in the near future, though. So what we'll talk about today, an update on the project schedule, some recent milestones we've made, project forward a little bit on some of the schedule components of some of the key projects that are ongoing, give a brief update on some Harcourt progress, review a little bit of the master developments schedule, just as a reminder of what the MDA had included in the schedule relative to what we're seeing out there. Do a little bit of a discussion on preparation for the October 4th commission meeting, which we'll have, we anticipate having some of the principal folks from Harcourt in town to meet with the commission on that meeting. Talk a bit more detail of the elements of some of the project activities that are going on, some of the cleanup activities, the general binding site plan, roads and utilities, a little bit of input on the district heat, where that's at, and we also talked about that as an eco-district component, and then where the port and city are partnering on the Whatcom Waterway Park. Then we'll also talk a bit more about on just some of the other projects that are ongoing, and then these future decisions that we want the commission to be aware of as we move forward. So this is a graphic here that shows some of the key projects that are underway right now or recently completed. These are some of the big projects that Port, City, and or Harcourt are working on, and just to show some of the progress and then preview where we think we're going on a graphical presentation here. These are not necessarily like a Gantt chart where they all line up sequentially. They're just each element in of itself has its own schedule. So the sequencing isn't, maybe it doesn't line up exactly, but each one of these elements, for example, the general binding site plan, that's the path forward. It doesn't necessarily coincide directly with what the path forward is on the project below it. But so working from the top down here, the Whatcom Waterway Phase 1 cleanup work, that's complete. That was a very large project, and that was one of the key site preparation components that we've wrapped up, and that's is done. So it's great work. Another one of the key cleanup projects that the port was undertaking is the pulp and tissue mill cleanup activities. That's almost done. In the next couple of weeks, you'll see a dramatic change, actually over the past few months, pretty dramatic change on the landscape of the GP site, and I've got some photos and some of the detailed elements of each one of these projects and some future slides here. So a lot of work's been done on the GP West pulp and tissue mill cleanup, and we anticipate that'll be done here in the next couple of weeks, actually. Another project that the port has been working on is the general binding site plan. Sylvia will talk about that in a little more detail, but that is the survey document that allows us to then start dedicating roads to the rights of way to the city, easements to the city parks, start breaking up parcels so we can sell them off to Harcourt, that sort of thing. That application has already been submitted to the city, and that's under review right now. We anticipate we'll have an approved general binding site plan for the first 30 or so acres in this fall.
Brian, why was that not done at the same time as the other documents? There were those 5 that we signed in partnership with the city.
There's a lot of elements that go into that document, and I might defer to Sylvia to talk through that maybe when we get to that slide, because we have a map that shows it and some of what the elements are. But there's just there's a lot of information that goes into that general binding site plan that just really was not ready at the time that we entered into the interlocal agreement for facilities. Those are actually pretty general and broad documents. This is a very specific document compared to those. The city here, the next couple projects are the city work. The city is working on the design and engineering of the Granary and Laurel streets. A lot of work has been done on that by their team. They've got a really great group of folks working on that. We actually anticipate a 60% design of the roads and infrastructure for that here this month or in October. They're moved pretty quickly from the 60% to bidding. There's a lot of information in a 60% design, and then they'll move pretty quickly into actually getting that project out to bid in late 2016. There's 2 phases of construction, and I'll show you a map that shows why they're breaking that up this way. But they anticipate that they'll have the first phase of construction of that road starting in January and then wrapping up in June of 2017, with the remainder of the road, which is phase 2, going from June 2017 till January of 2018. Also, a city project is the Whatcom Waterway Park. That's moving a little bit slower, but it's not as complicated as a large road with significant new infrastructure. They're looking at a January of 2017 90% design. They've done a lot of preliminary design and some sketches on what that's going to look like. So this is now refining that design. They plan on bidding that in the spring of 2017 with some upland construction and grading in the summer of 2017 with a second phase of shoreline work to coincide with a fish window in the fall and winter of 2017. And then lastly here, Harcourt is moving forward on a lot of work. The granary building is underway on the emergency repairs. A little more detail on these in the coming slides on those. We anticipate that in November of this year, we'll get a project memorandum from Harcourt describing what they're proposing for their project number 2. We anticipate there'll be some discussion of that with the commission when Harcourt's in town. And then there's projected that the granary building will be actually open for business in the summer of 2017. And then project number 2, construction to be determined, and I'll talk about why I put that there schedule-wise. The master development agreement schedule has a lot of flexibility, so I want to make sure I didn't project what Harcourt schedule will be when we haven't seen the project memorandum from them yet. So that to be determined is not an indication that they're not committed to building that project. Yeah. All right, so on Harcourt, jumping into some of the specifics of the projects that are in that previous schedule. As I mentioned, the granary building is underway right now. There's the emergency repairs that they're completing, which is for weatherization, repairing the roof to stop water damage. They took a fair amount of structural work to remove waterlogged and water damaged structural beams. It doesn't look like a whole lot of work is happening out there, but there's a lot that has happened, and you can see this photo actually was taken today, and the cupola and the roof has been repaired and new sheeting on there, and then also this photo doesn't show it too well, but up here those are stacks of new roofing material that they're starting to do the membrane on top of that flat roof, and then we'll probably see a significant amount of weatherization work that'll happen here on that building in the near future.
So they must have done a lot of work, because where's Adam? It looks like a little bit of weight right there on that roof.
There actually was a lot of structural framing on the interior, not necessarily improvements, but there was a lot of damage, so they had to do a lot of interior framing to support the water damaged structures. So in the meantime, though, the building permits for the full project is under review by the city right now, and we're anticipating that restoration work and tenant improvements will carry through the spring and into summer of 2017. So as we've talked about, we anticipate that Harcourt will be in town for a little bit of chunk of time at the beginning of October. We anticipate we'll be discussing the granary progress as well as their second project. And we don't need input directly today, but Rob will probably be discussing with the commissioners any specific topics that you'd like to have included in that agenda as well. So just a couple slides here on that schedule, and this is not a slide that I'm expecting you to digest. My next slide actually hones in on the area that I want you to focus on, but this is the current master development agreement schedule that was included as an exhibit to the MDA. You can see it's very comprehensive. It's actually projects from 2015 out to 2038. So there's a lot of information and a long time frame on there. And there's a lot of details. And this was amended, Second Amendment was adopted by the Commission in May of 2016. But the next slide focuses in on an area that I wanted to kind of highlight that we really are right on target. Even though things might seem like they're moving fairly slow, we are really right where we wanted to be. You can see here the Master Development Agreement was signed in 2015. This next 2015 and 2016, we anticipated that we would be underway with the site preparation, cleanup, and general binding site plan approval. And that's where we are right now. We're actually just wrapping all of those components up. The Phase 1 infrastructure for the granary building, Granary Avenue and Blowdell Avenue would be under permitting in 2015. The city's a little bit behind on starting construction, but if you remember, the schedule did compress, and they're hoping that they'll be wrapped up with that road in construction in 2017 and at the beginning of 2018. So they were a little bit behind schedule, but really right on time as far as generally speaking.
So on that street right now, originally the conversation was doing a useful street, but not a quote, complete street. Where are they at right now as far as that goes? Because the layout did change.
The layout changed, and they do anticipate, my understanding is they anticipate that they'll be building a complete street, sidewalks on both sides. Actually, and I've got a slide that shows a little bit of the design, and they're evaluating cycle tracks as separated bicycle, not lane, but a cycle track that's separated from traffic. So they're actually done a lot of work on those roads, and when we get to the 60% design, we anticipate we could provide the commission with a much more detailed presentation on what those roads will look like.
So the one concern that I think everybody would have is if they do the quote, complete street, building the cycle tracks, street trees, all the other things, well, there's going to be a lot of slicing through that work to hook up to utilities that are out in the streets. How is that conversation being managed?
Yeah, we actually meet every other week with the city, the Port City, and Harcourt sometimes is involved in those discussions. And at that 60% design, that is going to be circulated to all the stakeholders to provide exactly that kind of input. Okay. Where should they put stub outs for utilities? Where should we put utility vaults? Adam and Sylvia are working with the utility groups to say, okay, where would we want to have some of these vaults and pump stations, that kind of thing. There's a really detailed discussions that go on back and forth between the Port City and Harcourt, and that 60% design should lock that in. Cool. And with the goal of not cutting into a brand new street that you just built. Yeah.
And Brian, if I read this right, you anticipate that both those streets will be complete and drivable a year from January?
That's what the schedule in January of
2018.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
A year from January.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
The last two parts here that I just wanted to highlight was that as far as Harcourt's obligations, this is where we start. So these first three parts right here were the Port and City's obligations. Here's where we start getting into some of the Harcourt's obligations. And 2015 was those dashed lines really indicated project design, and then the double dashed lines was permitting. So 2016 was anticipated that all of 2016 would go towards permitting of the granary building, and that's right where we're at. They actually moved faster by getting that emergency repair permit in order to start the weatherization process. So Harcourt's right on track for the master development agreement for the granary building, and then we didn't want to create a schedule that was unenforceable, that was too optimistic, and we actually have 3 years in there for granary building construction. Those gray boxes show the construction. So the MDA calls for a completion of the granary building by 2019. So all things show that we're well ahead of what the schedule would have allowed for. And then the second development project, 2016 was design and project development, with 2017 being permitting, construction actually carrying all the way up, potentially out till 2021. So all things told, I think we're in really good shape. I just wanted, things sometimes seem like they move slow, but as far as we're concerned and what we've all agreed to, we're right on target.
So the completion of that second project wouldn't be finished till 2021?
Yeah, let me clarify that. That's a great question. This schedule is what the master development agreement schedule has, and these are the points that we have to meet these obligations. Otherwise, the MDA is in default. It's not necessarily the construction schedule. That's why we made them fairly optimistic, because we wanted Harcourt to be successful. We didn't want to set unrealistic goals that would constrain them and not have them be able to build or work through permitting processes. The end goal is to have a project that is workable on a reasonable time frame. So I think we're well ahead of schedule, but yeah, the construction schedules will be probably much different than what these are.
I might add, Commissioners, that if you recall, when we did the master development agreement, we were concerned about market conditions. And so these two projects are not market condition driven. So Harcourt was pretty careful with them because they were concerned that the market would be there to absorb these. And I think that what you're seeing is a result of the market. They're moving forward with the granary pretty rapid pace, and now the next building. So they have an interest in pursuing the market, but it was also market condition driven at the time.
Okay, in order to keep on my pace here, just a few photos here. This just shows the pulp and tissue mill capping project. significant change. These were actually taken today and yesterday. Significant change to the landscape down on the GP site. The flagpoles, we called it the pitcher mound, the flagpoles and that mound where the roller was at, that's been removed. The site's been graded out. We've imported over 50,000 tons of clean imported gravel and crushed rock. That's about 3,500 dump trucks worth of material has been brought in to bring in a clean cap. And it really kind of sets the stage for moving from cleanup into redevelopment. We think it really sets this up as development-ready parcels that we can start working on with Harcourt. This is a figure from probably the 30% design. I kind of joked last time I showed this to you, this was a drawing that only an engineer could love, but it's black and white that is really clear, and Adam thinks it's beautiful. But if you'll just to do a little bit of interpretation here, this is the city's streets, and the highlighted in green is the alignment of the Granary Avenue and Laurel Avenue out to Cornwall. This is the Granary building here. This is the board mill building here. I don't know if you can see this. I should use this pointer. Board mill building here, Lignin, and then Roeder Avenue coming in this way. So the city team is underway with design, as we've discussed a little bit. They are working on not only the road, but also the city utilities, which is sanitary sewer, water, and stormwater. The port team's working on the franchise utilities with Puget Sound Energy, Cascade Natural Gas, and Comcast and other telecom. The other components here are rights-of-way dedication and easements that are for the parks, the right-of-ways, and utility easements. So that's all moving along as designed and as anticipated. So far, no major surprises, but it's a lot of work and a lot of detail that goes into those. When we get the 60% design of those, we'll share them with the commission to show a little bit more detailed description of what the city's proposing. This is one utility component that I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion on or get some input on, or at least let the commission know that we'll be looking for some direction in the near future. The district heat is also, we've referred to that as the eco districts. We actually have been pursuing that with the city and Harcourt and a company called N-Wave out of Seattle. They actually operate the old Seattle steam plant that's in downtown Seattle right by the waterfront. They're really successful and very, really solid company that have district heat facilities all over the place. And they have a proposal to the port and city to operate a district heat system in the waterfront district. There's a lot that we need to start thinking about. They have a proposal to us that would they would operate this district heat system. We can go into a lot more detail with this in a separate meeting. I just want to get some of the details onto the table here for you. It would require about a $2 million capital investment from the port and city, which we anticipated would be a 50-50 split between the port and city with $1 million each, with a 20 to 30 year payback. The details of that have not been negotiated. That's just a kind of preliminary proposal that N-Wave has put forward that the port and city and Harcourt are actually evaluating right now.
So, Brian, that proposal, when it comes to municipal investment in infrastructure such as sewers, et cetera, there's never, as far as I know, a payback on that. In a case like this, there would be a recovery by the public for that investment over a couple of decade period, but at some point, the public would recover the cost of getting into that.
That's correct.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Brian, I see the proposal assumption is the second project being the hotel and conference center.
That's right.
Which, if either of my colleagues decided to change their mind and go for that, they'll have my vote in favor of that. I think as I look at this project, the way it is right now, to do this central heating, I think you would need a big project like that. And I would certainly be in favor of revisiting that.
Well, the N-Wave model assumes, as much development, the more development up front, the better for that model. The more infrastructure you put on from the very beginning, the faster the payback comes to everyone. So obviously 200,000 square feet beats a 40,000 square foot building when you're looking at district heat. But it's going to take more than, I think, just the Port Commission wanting a hotel there. We also have to have a developer that wants that to be their second project, and I'm not sure that's the case. But we can have more discussions with that with Harcourt while they're here. But I think they're looking at a little different direction direction than that as well, so.
So they've changed their mind on the second project?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they ever were dead set for a hotel there as the second project. I think they were floating it as an idea. I think the local architect, John Reed, was really promoting it as a second project. But Harcourt having that as be their second project, they never committed to that. But
Yeah,
it's
it is-
definitely something they want to talk to you about, the three of you about, when they're here.
And it is one, for the district heat discussion, it is one that NWAVE has mentioned. I wanted to make sure that was clear, so that was exactly what I want to talk about next, was that the business plan did assume that was one of the, at the time they put that business plan together, and with those paybacks and those investments, that was one of the components. And so they are reevaluating that, and I think that that's going to be a key part of our discussion in October, and that way we can get a discussion with Harcourt and NWAVE and the commission and the city to all kind of get on the same page. But it is, right now, was one of their key assumptions, and they actually sent an email saying, without something, a project of that scale, we're not sure of the viability of district heat right now. But that doesn't mean it was off the table, but it was just clear they wanted to put that forward as something for us to consider.
It also, it's NWAVE that's unsure of the viability of the district heat at that point. That doesn't mean that district heat is off the table, and it doesn't mean that there aren't other options to go forward with district heat. We had a conversation, I'm sorry, Mike Hogan's not here, but Mike Hogan and I had a conversation with Derek Long last week about district heat, and we expressed some of the concerns with NWAVE. They just, to me, they don't seem like a very willing partner. In the phone calls, they're like, well, we're not really sure we want to do Bellingham, so I'd rather go forward with someone that's a willing partner in this kind of thing, and Derek gave us a couple names of other companies to start exploring with, so we're going to do that.
The other thing, that first bullet is, to that point, the first bullet is we are continuing with the initial design of this. So the design components of having the piping in the ground and the piping system, we are moving forward with that. The city's paying for that. It's a relatively low-cost part of their 60% design. So that way we're not precluding others. Any design system would be really similar for the piping, at least. So that is continuing to move forward. It doesn't depend on any initial or direct feedback from NWAVE at this time. So that's going to be additional discussion in October, and one of the things that we'll probably need direction on is if it does look like this is something we want to pursue, is I think we were looking at like a four-way memorandum of understanding between the Port, City, Harcourt, and NWAVE. If this was something to pursue, we'd need direction at that point that, based on some deal points of an MOU that we could enter into to take it to the next step. So that's where we're at right now on the district heat. Some complexities, but it's not off the table. The last few slides here just highlight, this is the Whatcom Waterway Park planning that the city's underway with. We've shown you this slide before. This is actually just a little cartoon of what they thought some of the layout would be. They're actually in detailed design now. The layouts of all this will change. The one thing I wanted to highlight was is that the city has managed to, has put in here the salvage and reuse of the acid ball within the park's footprint. And that's something they are pursuing. And they've actually issued a request, or they call it a call for proposal for the design, fabrication, and installation of embellishments to a waterfront industrial artifact on the acid ball. So they've issued that in August. They've had some site visits. They have proposals due from artists in October. And actually, there's been a lot of really strong interest from national and international artists that really love this, that really want to do this. They have $130,000 worth of funding to go towards this project, and the city is pursuing it strongly. The Arts Commission is supporting it. Parks Department is supporting it. So from our end, what the direction that we'll need from the commission is pending a successful proposal sometime in October or November, we'll probably be coming to the Port Commission with a surplus and transfer component where we transfer this acid ball and icon over to the city.
My mom wants a tiny house in there, so
Tiny house, yeah, there you go.
how do I get a proposal in?
Well, right here, they're due October 3rd to the City of Bellingham. That's on the City of Bellingham's webpage.
I'm on it.
Yeah. And then the last little couple parts for me, and I'll hand this over to Sylvia. I just wanted the commission to know that we're continuing to work with the city on the Whatcom Waterway Park shoreline. If you recall, we talked a bit about how to deal with this bulkhead. The city and the port have entered into a contract with Coastal Geologic Services engineering firm that has designed a preliminary design to pull that bulkhead out, lay it back, have a softer shoreline, similar components to this type of material, a gravel beach along here that would facilitate park use, kayak launching, that sort of thing. So right now, we're working with the city on that. That's the second phase of the project, just due to the timing of fish windows and design. We anticipate that the upland part of the park will be constructed first, followed almost immediately by the shoreline restoration program. All right, with that, I'll turn it over to Sylvia, unless you have any specific questions for me right now. Okay. Yeah, just a couple more slides here.
Yeah, time check. We have 3 slides left. Do we want to continue?
Oh, sure, go ahead. Yep.
Brian already talked about the general binding site plan sum. This is a survey document, really. It's filed with the city, eventually it's recorded, and that allows us to dedicate the roads, utility easements for the parks, and then eventually to create parcels for lease or sale. Once the general binding site plan is approved, then we can apply for specifics, which are the smaller parcels that we would then lease or sell. We drew this one not to include the entire waterfront district, but to include the downtown area and the areas where we thought we would have roads and parks, utility easements during the early phases. And then the specifics will be much smaller as we go along.
Sylvia, please stay on that one.
Yes.
On the lower left there, it's that the boundary's been drawn around a part of the log pond area. Why did that line go so far that way?
At that point, we did not know how far into the log pond this area needed to go, that we were going to have early leases. We didn't know how far western was going to go into the log pond, and we didn't know what kind of industrial leases we were going to have. So this would allow us to create lease parcels for industrial if we have it. If not, then the leases just wouldn't be there. We didn't know at the time when we started it, you can always make it smaller, but you can't make it bigger. So we drew it to the center line of Myrtle.
Why wouldn't we?
Or no, we drew it all the way over to Ivy.
Why wouldn't we include the shipping terminal then?
Why wouldn't we? Because we knew we were never going to sell the shipping terminal, and there was other issues. If you made it too big, then you have to do all of the land title research and determine the edge of the Burlington and all of the other utility easements within there. So the larger it is, the more expensive it is to prepare and to do the legal research. And so we didn't want it any bigger than possible, and we were trying to keep it at a defined boundary. We could have brought it over to the next road being Myrtle, but then at that time we were talking about would western or might western go on the other side of Myrtle. So we went over to Ivy, which is the next street over, and we still have flexibility for drawing the boundaries within there for any parcels that you would lease or sell. We eventually are going to be doing another one on the other side of Cornwall and another one on the other side of the Wacom Waterway also, but we didn't need to do that yet. That answer your question? Mm-hmm. Okay. Other waterfront district activities, if you've driven by All-American Marine site lately over here on Hilton, it is moving along. The foundation is complete. They're starting to build the superstructure steel, and the vessel on the top right in this picture is the new Argosy, a picture of the vessel that they would be building under this new Argosy contract that All-American Marine just got. Really big vessel. It would not have fit in their other facility, and it's going to fill this other one up. This is exactly what we've been talking about, having marine trades on the waterfront, and when this is all said and done, we believe there's going to be 25 or 40 more jobs on the waterfront. So we're looking forward to getting that one done. We've been talking to you a bit about the iTech purchase, and that's purchasing the property at 800 Cornwall. Last I heard, that's going to be on your next commission meeting. And we've been, Shirley has been talking a lot to various tenants and entertaining ideas for the Lignan warehouse, the F Street warehouse, and then Dan is actively marketing the shipping terminal. A lot of promising ideas for both Lignan and F Street, and I think even we've had a few ideas for the shipping terminal. So we'll keep you posted on those as they move forward.
Are we, back to that picture, are we, All-American Marine, are we right on time with them? They were supposed to be in in that building by January. It was really aggressive, I think,
We
the end
believe
of
we're-
January.
Yeah, we believe we're on time and on schedule and on budget.
Boy, that's great. That's super.
You know, not to toot horns here, just an observation.
okay if we're tooting our own.
Well, it's just an observation of fact. So we're taking public dollars, we're building a building, we're leasing it back at a marginal return, not a lot.
Could be better.
The public gets all their money back, and we get more jobs. No tax break, no subsidy, right? That seems like a pretty dang good deal.
I think so.
All right.
That's how it should be.
Precisely what ports are for, huh?
I'm just saying, because you read in the newspapers all the time about, you know, attracting business through different methods of basically giving big tax breaks. In this case, you know, as a local company, help them out a little bit, they're still on port property, and the public gets all their money back. Seems like a pretty good
The
deal.
biggest key here is it allows a local company to compete on the national stage that they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So,
Otherwise,
good
yeah.
job, commissioners.
Yeah, we shouldn't forget the reason we worked out the deal we did with them is because they were considering moving to where they would have a much better rate moving out of Whatcom County. And we kept those jobs here and actually added jobs, so that's good.
Good work.
Without costing the taxpayers money.
Yeah, which is really great. That's just how it should be done. It can be done.
Super cool. Anyway, sorry there, Sylvia, thanks.
No problem. The last slide, again, are things that we're not asking for direction today, but just a reminder of upcoming issues. Some of these are ones that we'll probably want to talk to the commission while Harcourt is here. Again, adaptive reuse of the board mill building. Harcourt may still be interested in that building. The commission at one time said that is not the second project, so they're not moving forward with that building as the second project. But I think it'll be up to you three to talk to them and see what are their plans, what are their wishes, and what are your wishes. Relocation of Western Crossings, again, the purple piece in the middle of the binding, the MDA is still tied up by Western Crossings. Is the commission still interested in entertaining a move of that? And if so, where? That would be a decision to talk to the Western Crossings, Harcourt, and the city all have interest in that decision. Modification of the MDA boundary, the Master Development Agreement with Harcourt, right now straddles either side of the Western Crossings boundary. Are you interested in further discussion of relocating that? And the big decision that we're going to need to make fairly soon is, do we want to apply for a sub-area plan amendment this year in 2017? The deadline would be April 1. Do we want to wait till 18, or is that something we're interested in doing at all? The port, as the property owner working with Harcourt, would be the applicant, and we would need to work closely with the city and, again, Western Crossings on that. And then the last question is additional updates from staff. Is there additional information that we could be bringing you, additional information, statistics, acres, numbers, anything that you need to help you make some of these decisions, or additional topics that you would like us to cover in these updates to help you be better informed or give some opportunity for discussion?
Thanks, Sylvia. Got anything?
Well, I think you're very comprehensive updates. I don't have anything I would add.
Cool. Commissioner Briscoe, anything there? I'll give you a break, hang on. Why don't we put it in our heads that this sub-area plan is going to be needing amendment, and we'll just have something. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but why don't we just prepare ourselves emotionally and psychologically that we're going to be making some sub-area plan amendments, and we'll be going ahead with that. So that way we're not sort of
Right.
last minute, sort of like, oh crap, we didn't really think about it, so,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, any questions or comments?
Anything, Commissioner Briscoe?
Can Brian and yourself email us this information that you've shown us here?
Yeah, we'll get this PowerPoint to you, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question for you, Sylvia. So right in this image we're looking at, it says downtown waterfront, which is where the commercial street green is. When I talk to people, I'm getting basically zero positive feedback that commercial green and that bridge will ever be constructed. are you hearing similar in your conversations, or is it just sort of, it's a placeholder, but nobody's that excited about it, and it's expensive? And I know that Harcourt's not excited about it either.
You're absolutely correct, Commissioner. No one's really excited about it, and I think that's why we're talking about a sub-area plan amendment, and I think that's probably why we have to do it sooner than later. And by sooner than later, I'm talking 17 or 18. I think those are our options here. Not sure we can get our act together to get it done by 17. We'd like to, but definitely conversations we need to start having, the public needs to start having, and you all need to start having.
One of my major concerns, and this goes back quite a ways, is the cost, especially of the bridge in there. And I'm not, maybe the city's got some better ideas about their future here. This could be a couple of decades before they could ever afford that. But if the railroad does move, then the first priority would be Cornwall Bridge, which is maybe a $40 million project-ish, something like that. So,
Yep, that's right.
yeah, all right. Which would obviously push the Commercial Street Bridge out even further, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, I'm just sort of thinking if this is the kind of changes that we're probably already having to make.
That would
Yeah.
be a significant change to the plan, so it's just something that's worthy of discussion, then we'd have to look at the alternatives. Bay Street as a bridge would be less expensive to
Yeah.
construct because it's already over the tracks, and we've talked about the possibility of Bay Street having a parking garage with an entrance at the end of the bay, then the cars could come in, probably less expensive, at least the preliminary cost estimates, much less expensive than the commercial green.
Okay, all right. That's it for you? Yep.
Okay,
That's it
thank
for that?
you.
All right, so thank you for the update on that. We're going to have a recess here for about 12 minutes, so I'll come back at 5:30. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back. It is our 5:30. We'll take a little public comment now. Do we have anybody sign up for public comment? Diane? Oh, looks like Elizabeth's going to run back.
No, we don't
All
have
right,
any.
I see a few new faces there. Anybody want to just use our public comment period to speak at all? No? All right, with that, we are going to move on. Mr. Hogan has returned safely from Olympia, and we're going to get your legislative updates now. So,
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mike Hogan, Public Affairs Administrator. I'm here today to give you a briefing on the 2017 legislative agenda. In particular, the shared legislative objectives between the port, the city, and the county. This is an approach that we've used for the past couple years, really been appreciated among our legislative delegation and been very effective. We've hired McBride and Associates to represent us down in Olympia, and we wanted to bring this to you early to give you a chance, the different legislative bodies, a chance to weigh in, give some comments, then bring it back to each of our respective bodies, get approved, so we get a jump on the 2017 session. For our state legislative session, that's going to be dominated by education issues with trying to figure out the McCleary decision. However, we do have key priorities. In particular, this will look very similar to what we've had in the past with a few modifications. Basically 5 general areas. Model toxics control account funding, a key issue for the Port of Bellingham, for the City of Bellingham, and for Whatcom County. That's probably our #1 legislative priority to show folks now that we have our cleanup projects up and going. We're starting to get some business. You see the All-American Marine Project, the waterfront starting to develop to show the legislators just what a powerful economic development tool the model toxics control account grants are, as well as getting the Fairhaven shipyard some work up in Blaine going. So a very important priority for the port, the city, and the county. The infrastructure projects, that is, in last year's session, they passed the Connecting Washington Transportation Package, funded some key transportation priorities which were advanced through the COG in Whatcom County. As you know, just because you have your project on a list doesn't mean you'll get it funded, so we'll be working closely with the City of Bellingham and the county to make sure those projects get funding in the coming years. Another one that we have under infrastructure projects that's really important is we're trying to model an approach that's been used in North Carolina and Oregon to secure some state funding for dredging for one of our federal waterways, the Squalicum waterway that Bellingham Cold Storage, a lot of our waterfront tenants rely on. That was, maintenance dredging was last performed by the Army Corps of Engineers in 2004. It's overdue. That waterway is silting in. They can only get their larger vessels in at high tide. It's really critical that we get maintenance dredging performed on that. However, with federal funding issues, it's not like the good old days when we'd call the Army Corps of Engineers and they'd show up and do the dredging. And that's not just a problem here, it's a problem nationwide. And so Oregon, North Carolina, and other states have done an approach where they've actually contributed state funds to help support the dredging of these waterways. So we'll be looking to bring that approach to our legislators and hopefully get some state funding for our waterway and for other dredging projects statewide. The aquatic invasive species control with zebra mussels, aquatic weeds, important priority through the county. Fiscal sustainability, that's really about keeping the liquor tax and the marijuana tax that's generated locally for local services. Made a lot of progress on that in the past session. That'll continue to be a priority. And then criminal justice and social services funding for the critical services. So that's, in general, our draft legislative priorities for the port, the city, and the county. As I mentioned, that's similar to what you've seen in the past and the approach that we'll be looking to move forward this year. And I know the City of Bellingham has been briefed on that last week, and then the county should be soon. So happy to get your feedback and tune this up, and then we'll bring it back to finalize that and get a jump on the legislative session in 2017.
I also wanted just to give you a quick highlight of some of our federal priorities. One of the key priorities is modernizing the federal cap on the local passenger facility charge. That's $4.50 per passenger. It goes to local improvements at the airport. The cap was last established in 2000, so it's long overdue. We're supporting an approach that's advanced by the American Association of Airport Executives to move it to $8.50 and index to inflation. The FAA legislation is due up for reauthorization in September of next year, so we'll continue to work closely with our federal delegation to, in particular, show them how important that the PFC is to improvements we're doing at our airport.
Mike, can a PFC be less than what's allowed?
Good point. Yeah. So under the approach advanced by to raise it to $8.50, that's the cap. So then the commission would still set what that exact charge was. So say it was $8.50 and the commission decided we wanted to raise it to $5. You'd have the authority to raise it to up to $8.50. The contract tower program is another important source of funding for low to medium use airports such as we have out at Bellingham International. Continued federal funding for that program is really key. Also the AIP grants, the airport improvement grants, have been really important, 90% source of funding for security improvements, for improvements at the airport, for planning. So we'll look to protect the funding for that program, and then also continue to work with our delegation on the Squalicum Waterway maintenance dredging, as I mentioned earlier. So that's just a quick highlight of our shared legislative strategy in the state, some of our federal priorities. We'll also continue to work with the Washington Public Ports Association and have, that's not a comprehensive list, and other issues certainly will rise. So, but that's just a brief overview of some of those key objectives.
Commissioner Briscoe? No? Commissioner Robbins?
Go back. He's giggling. Go back to the second slide. I just want to make sure I comprehend this right. We're going to take the alcohol and marijuana tax and give it to social services, make sure it goes there to help fight drug and alcohol abuse. Is that correct? Just want to make sure that's right.
It's a vicious circle.
At least they're paying for it themselves.
Very good. Thank you.
It's like Ducks Unlimited. You want ducks, you pay for ducks. You get to shoot the ducks. It's the same thing.
Okay.
Okay, so Mike, you don't have to name this right now. It's always an issue that I find important is want to know who we're going to lobby. Who is it other than just our 6 local folks in the 40 and 42nd? Who else is important? If you can give us a heads up on that when we need to or when we do go to Olympia.
Yeah,
that would be great because I know it somewhat changes every year depending on whose bills are being sponsored and that sort of thing.
I appreciate that, Commissioner. And there's as I mentioned, we're in the political campaign season, but early in the political process. So we'll know a lot more after November 8th, after the elections. Shortly after November 8th, we'll get Tom McBride in here after we know the landscape, in particular the Washington Senate. It could go either way,
sure,
Democrat or Republican. But we'll get you updated on what the political landscape is, who the key people are on the committees, and I know in the past it's been really effective and really appreciated to have you gentlemen go down and meet with our legislative, the 42nd and the 40th, but then also be involved in that process and make contact with the other key people.
Yeah, I think that the push that a lot of folks, especially from here, Whatcom County, made with the MACA and the issue at the shipyard in Fairhaven,
yeah,
that made a big difference. So that was always very useful. Do you know when the session starts? Because I know they start throwing bills out early, but I don't know. I haven't paid attention to them. It's like
The second week of January, I believe, but we'll get you the exact date.
Okay, cool.
And this is a longer session too, I think.
It is.
And they're starting to gather information now, so while they don't officially meet till then, we can certainly talk to them and get some of the stuff in front of them before that, because they're starting to mass capital plans and all that.
The council, my next point is about that council of governments thing. So the council of governments asked, and I want to make sure you two hear this too. So they asked for something interesting this time. Instead of going just to Olympia as the COG on a transportation-related issue, they were asking for all the county and the other cities, including the port, to put in any capital requests for capital improvements, not just transportation-related improvements. I got excited, and nobody was ready. It wasn't my idea, by the way. It was one of the small cities that came up with that. I'm
sorry to interrupt. This was discussed this morning at the Small Cities Caucus, and there's some mixed feelings on it. There's some good reasons why not to do it. There's some really good reasons why to do it, but I think it's a topic that's going to be discussed a little more amongst the small cities mayors and COG, and hopefully get some resolution to it, if not for this year, certainly for the next one.
Yeah, the county, Jack wasn't real excited about moving forward with it. They've got a different program going on, so it didn't really help them at all, so they weren't going to throw any effort into it. I got excited for the first time since I've been here on the Port Commission, because I could finally raise my hand and suggest we ask for something, because normally it's all a county road or a city street or something like that, and it's never something that we can get involved in. However, the waterway dredging, is that something that we can throw at the COG and say, hey, this is a transportation thing, and they can help us on that?
Yeah.
Of course, it has to go through their process, and it probably will fall off their list, but it's just one more point of contact we can make.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a regional transportation planning committee called the Farmhouse Gang.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spoke at their last meeting and talked to them specifically about this issue, and how it relates is if the Squalicum Waterway silts in and they can't get the boats into Bellingham cold storage, it's going to put millions of truck miles onto our already overburdened freeways. So I think there's definitely a direct link. We'll be working with our legislators on, what is the best avenue to access funding for that issue. But I think working with the COG and working with the transportation folks is a really important one.
And is there, now, I know, Rob, that Doug Thomas has been interested in working with the shipping terminal on barge traffic. Is there a link we could maybe make there as well?
We've tried that in the past, and we've talked to State Department of Transportation about this short sea shipping and how many trucks it gets off the road. And at that time, it was probably 2009, the state was probably in its worst budget crisis ever, so there was no money to do it. But it's certainly something we could reapproach with them now that their budget seems to be a little, and they still have a lot of challenges with their budget, but maybe not quite as bad as it was in 2009.
Well, that's something, we keep bringing this up. It's like, you make a small investment here, because you got like the big Port Salem, Tacoma, right? Obviously they got together because they got more sway in DC, right? But a small investment, like at the Port of Bellingham, is huge in a percentage of growth basis. Yeah, it's not maybe, a whole new company in King County, but here, 50 new jobs, it's a big deal. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to bring some leverage, and maybe in this case we can use COG, because there is some appetite now at the Council of Governments to have conversations like this with the port, which it's the first time I've ever heard about it, so I was pretty excited.
Yeah, the Council of Governments actually just sponsored a study about kind of intermodal traffic study, and it had to do with the lower BC in this area, and short sea shipping was on it. So they've got a draft of that study that we're going to share with you here very shortly. It's not official yet, but they've said we could look at a draft of it, and I'm hopeful that we'll see something substantial about this short sea shipping.
Super cool. Yeah. That's it for me. Anything further from? All right. Hey, thanks, Mike.
All right.
Glad you made it back safe. That is the entire agenda for today, I do believe. And any new business? Commissioner Robbins?
I have nothing.
Nothing. Commissioner Briscoe, any new business you want to bring up?
Not right now, no.
Well, you've been gone for how long?
I know, I had some stuff.
Got it all out of your system on the drive home?
No, the plate's pretty full at the moment, so I just assume hold off for another meeting.
I do have something to mention. I think it was about the Council of Governments. I kind of alluded to that. So I think I just said everything I need to say about the Council of Governments. So maybe there's something we can piggyback with those guys on.
And I'll share this. They had a whole PowerPoint presentation this morning, and I'll share that with all three of you. I think Dan was there and got one, but
Yeah, it was
I'll
good.
pass it around.
Yeah, it was there this morning. It was a good presentation, good meeting. It is tough to prioritize, though, all these projects, and it kind of gave the perspective of what a senator or a representative goes through. Among the small cities, they tried to prioritize their own projects or even talk about doing it. And of course, if Blaine has a project, it's number one for Blaine. but Linden's is number one for Linden, and to get them to prioritize them is very difficult. But that's really what the senators and the legislators eventually have to do. They were, and Luann Van Worthen pointed out that if you guys can't do it, how can we do it? So it was interesting, but like Rob says, there's pluses and minuses to it. But at least they're putting them all out there on the table, which is good.
That's what's nice about the COG. The COG hasn't brought a lot of value to port projects, but because of their process, they have to prioritize their list. So they do really well, and if there's funding, they do really well in getting those. But how the COG gets to that priorities list, it's like every other thing. So sometimes the gorilla in the room, or the 800-pound gorilla in the room, gets more than maybe Blaine.
You picking on me or what? Blaine.
No, maybe Blaine. No, Blaine's getting picked on or ignored sometimes. It's hard though. It's like Point Roberts with us. Like, what are you doing for Point Roberts? It's tough. That's it, I suppose. So, Rob, you got anything further? Oh, one other point. So this has been on my mind lately. Shipping terminal. We need to have a really good, long discussion about the shipping terminal because we're investing a pile of money into it. Dan, we're going to chat with you a bunch, I hope, about this. The Horizon ship's gone, so we're going to have to figure out how we're going to maximize the amount of money the asset based on the amount of money we're about to pour into it. So
We'll get that as a kind of roundtable work session going here pretty soon. We got Harcourt next, and maybe after that.
All right, super cool. All right, so Rob, anything at all? You do? No? Senior staff? Anybody who's here just to hang out? We're having beers in a minute. Anybody? No, I'm kidding, we're not.
Nobody's, I see we got new faces and nobody has anything.
I know, that's all right. We'll just be observed. It's all good. All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, y'all.